Hello and welcome to Hooting Mandrills. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Sam, and it's finally scheduled B&R Day, which means we get to look over the wreckage of basically every constructed format in Magic and see what Wizards is going to do about it. We'll dive right in.
So for the standard format, Vivi Ornitier is banned, Screaming Nemesis is banned, Proft's Eiditic Memory is banned.
Pioneer Heartfire Hero is banned. Modern, no changes. Legacy Entomb is banned, and Nadu Winged Wisdom is banned. Vintage, no changes. Pauper High Tide is banned. Interesting one. Alchemy, no changes. Historic, a set of pre-bans that are coming in the various eternal portions of Avatar. Force of Negation, Frantic Search, Mystical Tutor, Entomb, and Dark Depths are pre-banned. No changes in Timeless. Strip Mine, Mana Drain, Chrome Mox, and Ancient Tomb now banned in Brawl. So, a lot of stuff going on here. In some ways different from what I might have expected, in some ways more, in some ways less. Let's just jump in and see what they have to say about it. The first thing they have to say about it is the phrase "Howdy Gamers." My name is Carmen Clomperens, Senior Game Designer on Magic's Play Design team. Welcome to the final banned and restricted announcement for 2025. In our summer announcement this year, we saw a number of cards banned in Standard, but in the time since then, it has become clear that additional action would be necessary in a couple of formats. To that end, we've got a few different formats seeing changes today with notes from myself, Jadine Clomperens, Eric Engelhard, Gavin Verhey, and Daniel Zhu that speak to changes in tabletop and digital formats. As a reminder, when we announced we would be lightly adjusting the timing of this banning window in a link to an article, we plan to move toward a more frequent announcement cadence to adjust formats as necessary, and there will be more details on that to come before the end of the year. In the meantime, I'm happy to hand the proverbial microphone over to Jadine Clomperens to speak to changes in Standard. We're also announcing that the next banned and restricted update will be published February 9th, 2026. And as usual, we'll be on Weekly MTG on Twitch to discuss these changes. Okay, so that sounds like they are shortening the ban window, which I think they need to do. They can't just leave a format on fire for 2 months, but the next one is 3 months from now. It is 3 months from now, though it is only a month after the release of Lorwyn.
Right, so I mean, we'll do a set review of the Avatar cards, but I do fear that some of those cards may also become problems for the Standard format. I want to come in hopeful on that these cards are just going to be fine, but even just like looking at the concepts of firebending and the concepts of earthbending and airbending, waterbending, I think is harder to break in the Standard format, although prove me wrong, please. It seems powerful as well. So I don't know. Those are just like the base mechanics are all really, really powerful. So we'll see if it's all fine for Standard, but at least we know that in February they'll think about doing something again. I don't want to come in to this being negative, but I am. So that's where we're at for Standard at least. But let's just look to see what Jadine has to say about Standard. Standard has been in poor shape for the past few months. The Izzet Cauldron deck has cemented itself as the strongest deck in the format and has unacceptably high win and play rates over a sustained duration. The deck utilizes Izzet Proft's Eiditic Memory core that we've seen previously, and like in Jeskai Oculus, and yeah, but it's more powerful with Vivi is like obviously the whole problem. Okay, we all know that stuff. Are they just going to talk about how it's busted in here? Yeah. So we all know that it's busted. Okay, let's look.
The thing they say about Profts looks interesting.
Yeah.
There are clear parallels between Proft's Eiditic Memory and Up the Beanstalk, which we banned in June's update. Both cards are one-card game plans that provide a lot of strength over the course of a game. In addition, they are both 2-mana enchantments that draw you a card when you play them. This makes both cards hard to profitably interact with, since both cards leave you up a full card following the exchange. This combination of qualities is a dangerous recipe for a card in the strongest deck in the format, as it greatly limits the number of decks that can combat the strategy. In terms of power level, Proft's Eiditic Memory has proven itself as a strong Standard engine. It broke onto the scene in a big way away in the Jeskai Oculus deck at Pro Tour Aetherdrift, with a Proft Eiditic memory deck lurking in nearly every standard metagame since. Prior incarnations of the deck have been healthy additions to the metagame, but recent additions like Winter Night Stories and Quantum Riddler, as well as an increased level of optimization for the core shell, leave us concerned that even without Vivi, the deck would continue to be one of the best decks in the format, and potentially even the clear best deck. To ensure that the standard metagame has room for new decks and innovation in the future, Proft Eiditic memory is banned. So
this is a good ban.
Yeah. In our last pod, you were saying that you thought the Proft shell, even without Vivi, was the clear best deck in the format.
And like they figured out why too in their explanation. That's like sometimes they ban these cards and they don't even know why they have to do this. But like, yes, Winter Night Stories and Quantum Riddler with Proft's memory is just not something that can stick around. Winter Night Stories and Proft's Eiditic memory is like just infinite card draw engine. You know, it just does it itself. So glad to see that card go. I liked it. You know, before the whole Vivi thing, I was kind of like seeing, is there a way to play this deck before Vivi? I was more interested in it. Since then, yeah, obviously it's been solved. It's over. And I'm glad that this card is banned.
And I kind of was on the fence about whether they would pull the trigger on Profts. I think they didn't want it to be too clear of a best deck, but, you know, I thought that maybe they would be fine or even happy to see it continue to be a tier 1 or even the best deck. But apparently not. They're doing more to shake up the format, and that's going to make Standard more interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, like, there's an obvious Izzet deck that's going to be a tier 1 deck. Now that these bans have happened, it may not be possible for Izzet to compete right away. They love Izzet cards. There may just be Izzet cards waiting in the wings, and maybe it's a back to Jeskai Oculus sort of thing. We've seen a couple of really good cards coming into that, some that we'll talk about in our set review.
There's no longer a tier 0 deck that plays main deck Graveyard Hate, so Oculus could be back on the menu just for that reason.
Yeah, now that you can't just slap Cauldron in your deck and have it just be the best card.
Oh, you can still slap Cauldron in your deck,
It's
and
just
maybe
not the
there
best
is a
card.
good Cauldron. Maybe there is a good Cauldron deck, but
Highly unlikely, in my opinion, yeah.
it is not the deck, and you are not just catching strays both from main deck Graveyard Hate against this deck and the main deck Graveyard Hate in this deck.
With Kavero, I'm not sure that people are going to take all the main deck Graveyard Hate out of their decks, because it seems like a good time for Kavero to kind of swoop in. So maybe don't take every piece of Graveyard Hate you have out of your deck, you know, just because this deck is gone. But I'm probably still gonna main deck at least my one of Soul Guide Lantern, but even without this. But anyway, I may change as I see the meta unfold. But yeah, so then they also talk about Screaming Nemesis.
We are also acting against the Mono Red aggro deck today. Mono Red has proven itself as the deck most able to hang with Izzet Cauldron, despite failing to meaningfully prove an obstacle to Izzet Cauldron's dominance of the format. Its play rate at competitive events and its win rate in our internal data has us concerned it may prove to be the clear frontrunner in Standard in a post-Izzet Cauldron world. Metagames where an aggressive deck is clearly the best deck are often painful for diversity because many slower decks can't compete. To prevent this outcome, we are electing to ban Screaming Nemesis.
So this is a card that I talked about last week, you know, saying like probably the best card in mono red, just like looking at it in a vacuum. So yeah, I think this is the right call.
So I'm sort of interested by what they're saying here, because I think neither of us thought that mono red was the clear next best deck. It was that mono red was a deck engineered to be good against the Vivi deck. Mono red sort of pops up in some form or other in every standard. It's almost like D&T. It's almost a taxes deck where it's like, oh, Magebane Lizard turns out to be a good thing against Cutter. We can main deck that. Or Razorkin Needlehead is really good against Vivi Cauldron. We can main deck that. And we can play Threatens in the sideboard. And we can build a deck that is good at sort of taxing and getting damage on the Vivi player and then cheesing them out. And so it's interesting that they think, you know, it's likely that mono red is just the deck waiting to take the crown. And there probably will be a red deck that's prominent in the meta. There always is in Standard. It'll probably be worse without Screaming Nemesis. It's interesting that they think of mono red and not, say, Dimir that way.
Right, and I think it's because that mono red is the only one that can hang with Vivi, like they say. But I think that as far as mono red being the best deck, it's probably largely more due to the fact that there's no good removal in the format. And like removal that we have in the format actually stacks up a lot better against mono red than it does against some of the other things. Obviously, half of the cards in mono red are still outlaws, but you can't play Razorkin Needlehead in your main deck anymore. Like, there's no reason to do that. Like, no other deck really is going to abuse card draw unless we're going to see more of that to some other kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm fine with this ban. Screaming Nemesis is a really good card, and it's definitely kind of negative against red and green strategies we talked about last time.
Let's see what else they have to say about it. Screaming Nemesis is among the strongest cards in the default mono red aggro deck. Sort of, again, like, is there really a default mono red aggro deck, or is there one that emerges out of sort of toxic or very inbred metagames? I would say the latter is more the case, but anyway. And one of the most frustrating cards to play against in the deck. I agree with that. It single-handedly removes most counterplay against mono red by giving the mono red deck a great game plan against two of mono red's natural predators, life gain, and large blockers. I agree with that. Screaming Nemesis out of the equation, we believe it is far more likely that the metagame will find a healthy equilibrium with mono red as just part of the landscape, not the deck to beat. There are versions of mono red that forego Screaming Nemesis, instead opting for cards like Leyline of Resonance and Slickshot Show Off for a faster and more all-in version of the mono red deck. Despite such a deck winning Magic Spotlight Spider-Man in Baltimore a few weeks ago, we believe that this strategy is more inherently attackable than the versions of red that play Screaming Nemesis. Okay, so like I said, I do kind of disagree with some of the premises about mono red as a deck, but I agree with all this about Screaming Nemesis. If you're trying to go bigger than red in a color that isn't black or white, that can remove Screaming Nemesis cleanly, you are having a really bad time.
And like, we still have Sunspine links to help with the life gain, but I think in 3 months we're probably going to see a ban out of life gain.
Oh, you think so?
I mean, I likely think that this is the only thing that was really stopping life gain.
Orzhov life gain, you think, is a huge winner that is going to be tier?
I think it's getting pushed to tier 1. I mean, I could be wrong. I am the biggest hater of life gain of anyone you'll ever meet. So, like, I live in fear of it, I guess. But I don't think that there's a lot to combat it.
You were on Arena in the bad old days.
Yeah, I was on Arena in the bad old days. I think that we're going to see, like, a banning in February if they don't ban Amalia or something. Like, I don't even know what you ban out of that deck. There's so many.
All the cards do the same thing.
All the cards do the same thing. So, like, you can't even really
do one of the two same
Hylia,
things,
maybe they can ban Hylia. That might work. I don't know.
Hylia's a good card.
I don't think any of these cards are broken, but they either need to print something else to shut off life gain forever, or, you know, something. There has to be a way to actually deal with that deck, and now there isn't anything to deal with them. And like I said, removal's really bad. You've just kind of created the same problem now by, like, I was for the banning of Screaming Nemesis, but now, like, that I think about it with life gain, now the life gain deck just fills that same role where if you're trying to go big in red, you can't do anything. You just lose to life gain every time. So yeah, I don't know. Kind of an L, to be honest, now that I'm thinking more about it, but maybe it'll be fine.
Does life gain go over the top with numbers faster than, like, the Simic deck does?
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
it takes turns and turns, or like if you have to take its turn in the Simic deck to set up with like an Innkeeper's Talent, your Ouroboros can grow the team and whatnot. If you want to start at 2, you either have to ramp a ton, which is possible, but like then you need to have multiple 1-drops, and like I'm never lucky enough. It doesn't matter if I could play 14, 21 drops. I won't see 2 of them in a Simic deck, but you guys are much luckier when you play Simic, so maybe you can get Elf into Pollinator into, you know, like, you know, Jackal to copy them, you know, that kind of thing. But for me, I've never seen multiple 1-drops in a game of Simic, so I stopped playing Simic for that reason. But yeah, I think that Simic's got a harder time to profit off of this than Life Gain. Life Gain's going to get
Simic was
bigger.
also sort of... I mean, both were sort of okay.
Those decks were
Nemesis.
kind of okay. I mean, yeah.
They like Unable to Scream and Black and White removal were sort of where you wanted to be against Nemesis.
Yeah, like, honestly, like, the best strategy that I had was, like, if you can on turn 3 with the help of an elf, that's really the best way to do it. But if you have to on turn 4 against the Life Gain deck, if they're kind of, like, going slow with their setup, you can, like, play the Nemesis, then either Fire Magic or Torch it, and, like, turn off the Life Gain and win the game that way. That was the best strategy I had against Life Gain in some of my matchups, but...
I mean, sure, you can proactively target your own Nemesis.
No, that's, like the only strategy to beat Life Gain. I don't know. Maybe I'm cooked, but, like, I feel like that's the only strategy.
I mean,
you're never beating it with blocking
I am
or
willing to
like
believe
that. You have to do it yourself.
That Red was not beating dedicated Life Gain without a strategy like this.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm even talking about, like, in my artifacts deck. Like, that was my only strategy to beat Life Gain. Like, kill all their creatures, I guess, was my other strategy. But
we are, it sounds like, worried about there still being a lot of very linear decks in Standard that are hard to interact with.
And the removal is still bad, yeah.
because removal is still bad. And so, like, a lot of combo, and then, or you think that Life Gain is the way to just make numbers go up. It is, in absence of a card like Nemesis, better than the Simic numbers go up deck. Is your
Maybe.
thesis?
I don't
here.
know. I think the Simic deck is also a very good deck. But, like, as far as, like, getting big faster, I think that Life Gain gets bigger faster.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there certainly are a lot of things that do that still in Standard. There is a lot of very linear stuff that we talked about last week still in Standard. But I do think all these bans are positive.
They're good. All good bans in Standard. I agree with all of them.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to see the necessity. Either Lorwyn has removal in it, or we're going to need to see more bans in February. Even that
Maybe
won't help.
both,
But we need both. We need
Like,
a lot of both, probably. Probably we need to do bans every time.
So there's our, I guess, somewhat pessimistic view of the future in Standard. WotC is probably more optimistic, or at least phrased as such, vision of the future is. Learnings and the future. Love that as a section header. A common element in all three of today's Standard bans is an emphasis on counterplay. We want Standard to be a format where decks are strategically distinct, with a clear identity and the ability to do powerful things. Creating a healthy metagame in a world where decks have clear and powerful game plans means that those strategies need to have strong counterplay available. It is a failing of the format if there is a strong deck in the metagame that doesn't have a good counter strategy available. This philosophy underpins both our choices today and our card designs in the future. The philosophy of powerful decks with appropriate counterplay means we need to be careful with cards like Screaming Nemesis. The role we intended for Screaming Nemesis was to give mono-red aggro players who wanted to play their deck in a hostile metagame a way to feel like they had room to maneuver and a fighting chance to win their fair share of matches. It succeeded in that job too well, and instead denied players who wanted to attack mono-red the ability to do so. We took a risk, making a card that insulated mono-red against life gain and blocking at the same time, and introduced the possibility that missing on rate would lead to exactly what we have seen play out in our recent Standard, a strong version of mono-red that lacks sufficient counterplay. Screaming Nemesis isn't really missing on rate. It's a 3/3 haste for 3. That's like normal good rate for the top of your mono-red curve. I don't know what that means, but sure, I basically agree with the rest of that. Missing on the power level of a new card is, to some extent, inevitable, but there are ways we can improve our accuracy. Vivi Ornitier is an example of a card where the ramifications of an individual power level mistake were amplified tremendously by our failure to find the interaction with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Increasingly, the Standard metagame has been defined by a ceiling of strong multi-card synergies rather than the power level of an individual card. Adjusting to this is a design shift that is in progress, and we still have room to grow. So this is sort of what we talked about, one of the things we talked about last week, that like Standard is so big. It is so much bigger than it has ever been that they are more likely to make this sort of mistake in Standard the way that they would in Modern or Legacy than they ever have been before. And, you know, the entire internet recognized, or, the internet hive mind recognized before Vivi came out that Vivi Cauldron was a thing. We talked about it in our set review of Final Fantasy. People were playing first drafts of Vivi Cauldron in early access.
It's sort of embarrassing to admit that you couldn't find...
Right, but we sort of knew that...
Agatha's Soul Cauldron, you should know that card exists in a format and that you have to consider every activated ability differently because that card is in the format.
Sure, yeah.
That's
when
crazy.
we were reviewing Foundations, we talked about it's this has an activated ability. Perhaps Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Even
5-cost things that say draw 3, old cards, whatever, completely stuff that you would never play where just because of Agatha's Soul Cauldron, it's something to consider.
And Nadu was sort of this too, where it is a really embarrassing thing to miss the way that they did. Cephalid Breakfast has been a legacy deck forever. It is something that should have been on the radar of the people designing the set, but it is much harder to do this.
There's an infinite amount of cards in Modern.
Yeah, the larger the format is,
there are zero-cost equips, but
the larger the format is, the harder it's going to get, and Standard is really huge. But they say they're adjusting to it. Maybe in 3 years we'll see evidence of that. Everything is done 2 years ahead of time. But okay, sure, why not? Similarly, Proft's Eiditic Memory is an example of a strong engine card where the ever-increasing density of strong interactions available in the format got away from us. We designed and tested Proft's Eiditic Memory in Murders at Karlov Manor Standard, a format where most of its powerful synergies didn't exist. We noted this lack of options and made Steam Core Scholar in the same set to be a great card alongside Proft's Eiditic Memory. Because there weren't a lot of strong synergies with Proft's Eiditic Memory, we felt comfortable printing it at a high individual rate. We thought the overall deck was of medium strength but really fun. We particularly enjoyed that despite synergizing with card draw, it asked players to tap out on their turn to get full value. Our prediction was that it might show up here and there, but it was unlikely to be among the strongest decks in the metagame. And we were right for that environment. It took several months until the release of Duskmourn House of Horror and Fear of Missing Out for the Proft's Eiditic Memory package to really cement itself as a key player in Standard. As new cards were released and the overall package became stronger, the experience of playing against the deck became less fun. For example, the addition of Fear of Missing Out gave it access to bursts of combo damage that the versions we tested didn't have. The addition of a combo finish made the deck stronger and more punishing to play against. Once we recognized that Proft's Eiditic Memory had the capacity to be exceedingly powerful alongside creatures that draw cards and cheap spells that draw multiple cards, we should have considered how likely we were to make more of those cards in the future. In this case, the answer was extremely. In the future, this is a question we will be asking before shipping similar engine cards at high rates. So this is kind of weird to me because we just talked about in the Vivi Cauldron section how Standard is huge and how every decision is made so far out ahead of time. It's weird and confuses me a little bit about their pipeline that they didn't see FOMO. Duskmourn was not the set right after Murders, then
Bloomburrow,
then Duskmourn. Yep. But still, relatively short runway between Murders and Duskmourn that confuses me with some of my assumptions of how play design worked, that I would have thought that a lot of these cards would have been in testing together. I would have thought that even about cards that came along, further down the line, like Winter Night Stories and Riddler, were the things that really broke this open. A card draw spell that cares about creature power and a big chunky idiot that doesn't really do that much with Profts other than draw cards itself and fly to be a thing to put counters on when he's a real boy, but does go really well with Winter Night Stories.
But yeah, I mean, the thing that was with Wild Ride and stuff as well, obviously it's fine for there to be haste pump spells. They're good, they're fine, they don't hurt anybody, except in this context where they do hurt people, where you just make an infinite Riddler, haste it, win the game. like the whole deck is completely stupid. But I think that as far as like what we're talking about here with the Profts thing, like even before Winter Night or maybe it's simultaneously with Winter Night, but like we have Steam Quark Scholar, Tursa, and that horrible white-red one from Final Fantasy. Is it Light? No, it's not
Joshua.
Light. Joshua. Yeah. Like, and they're making Sokka do the same thing at 2 mana now too. So like, thankfully Profts is gone. Like, but yeah, obviously you're going to print creature cards that draw cards, and to just like give infinite counters and like getting it on both sides of the shark, you know, like getting it when you discard and then also when you draw on the shark was too much.
It is true that like ETB faithless looting or ETB, you know, whatever, double rummage usually has been their favorite thing to do basically since they printed Profts. And it is a little weird to me that they didn't clock that and talk about not clocking it this way. Or it seems like a weird thing not to realize based on how I had assumed play design to work. They say they've learned their lesson. We will know if that is true.
Yeah, if you ever see a card that costs 2 mana and it says draw a card on it and it's a permanent, maybe just buy them, you know? They're probably going up in value. But anyway.
At least if it does anything
else, yeah. If it just, I mean, I don't know. Even an Ickerwell Spring Cryogen Relic is a pretty safe bet, too. They probably went up since the first value. I don't know.
Yeah. In formats other than Pauper, it has to do something else by sitting on the battlefield, I think. But yeah, certainly a pattern to be aware of. So let's close out on WotC's thoughts on patterns to be aware of. To close out this section on Standard, I'd like to acknowledge that this year's cadence for banned and restricted announcements has not been ideal, and competitive standards suffered for it, especially in the last 3 months. We still believe in our underlying standard banned list update philosophy. We want these updates to be predictable, and we want the standard format to feel stable. While our fundamental philosophy remains intact, we recognize that our execution this year caused pain, which we need to address. We're learning, growing, and doing better.
We're sorry.
We're acknowledging harm. Okay, not to be too mean to this sort of language, I understand where it comes from, but it is always a little cringe when a corporation starts talking that way. As mentioned at the beginning of this article, next year we will be increasing the number of banned and restricted update windows. This will allow us the flexibility to respond quickly if the metagame ends up in a severely imbalanced state again. Our bar for action in Standard remains high, but we do intend to intervene in situations like this where the format is clearly dominated by a single outlier deck with no clear angle of attack. As stated above, the next banned and restricted announcement will be on February 9th, 2026. We'll also be discussing these changes to our banned and restricted update windows on Weekly MTG on November 11th, so be sure to tune in. So it is November 10th at the time of recording, so we don't know what they're going to say about these new BNRs. I would guess they're probably moving to a 2-month window.
I can't imagine anything else. I mean, they're not doing every month, clearly. If they would have scheduled it for January, if they were going to do it every month.
Yeah. So that does mean that there will be a BNR in between most standard sets now. That Lorwyn will have a month, there will be a BNR happening, and I think that if we assume every 2 months, there will maybe be 2 sets that fall within the same window between announcements, like because there are 7 sets next year, but
they'll probably try and keep it with one of the smaller sets, right, with that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
like Turtles and
there might
Star
be
Trek.
Like both TMNT and what's the third one? I think Strixhaven is the 4th one. I don't remember what. We'll put it up on the screen, but there might be like, so if we assume one in February and one in April, I think there are maybe 2 sets between those, or maybe there will be some other window where one of the extra Universes Beyond sets means there are technically 2 standard sets between a window. But mostly, and probably going forward when they settle into their 6-set rhythm, there will be, 1 month a standard set, next month a BNR, and so on. Just odd-numbered months get the set, even-numbered months get the ban window. And that's probably as good as we can hope for under scheduled BNRs.
Yeah, I mean, they can't just ban all the time. They can't just, like, whenever somebody's upset, ban either. Like, you have to be upset for a while to even receive a ban, it seems. But at least now they're looking to do it more often, and that's really all we can ask for. Like, Standard will not be fixed by this, and we gotta hope that...
It's the start to a healing healing journey.
Yeah, it's the start for a healing journey, and maybe none of this would have even mattered with how powerful the cards are in Avatar, but maybe not. Maybe I'm a little high on the power level. Should we get into Pioneer?
Let's get into Pioneer. Written by Carmen Clomparens. Heartfire Hero is banned. Pioneer is in an interesting place.
That we don't look at.
It's in an interesting place that we will pay no attention to. Why would we pay attention to an interesting thing? From an outside perspective, things look pretty good. There are a number of viable decks with a Magic Online Showcase Challenge earlier this month featuring 5 distinct archetypes in its elimination rounds. The core problem in the format, especially on MTG Arena, is that too large a portion of the format consists of mono-red aggro and decks built specifically to prey on mono-red aggro. Are you a dick if you're building specifically to prey on mono-red aggro? Let us know in the comments. I would posit no, but it's for good reason too, as mono-red aggro is the archetype with the highest win rate by a substantial margin. And when you zoom in on best of one play,
please stop doing that.
It also sees more play than the second and third most played archetypes combined. Overall, our goal with this ban is to reduce the win rate of mono-red, specifically by targeting the degree of pressure to have interaction on the first turn or risk dying on the third turn that Heartfire Hero puts on the format. Pioneer is deep enough that we believe mono-red aggro should be able to comfortably adapt, and the lessening inevitability that comes with its early pressure will broaden what its players can explore. Unless that exploration involves Death Mist Raptor, who is still shadow banned from the format on MTG Arena.
Boo.
But, I mean, I think this is fine. When I last was playing a lot of Pioneer, I was pretty frustrated with my red matchup. I think it's interesting that they talk about the arena data this much. I mean, the Magic Online challenges are the same 30 grinders playing a lot of the same shit all the time because Pioneer is so unsupported of a format. On Arena, when you play Pioneer, you run into a lot of red because a lot of people like playing red on Arena, especially best of one, although I wouldn't know from personal experience, but it makes sense that red would be really popular in best of one. But you see a lot of decks that just you can't really play anywhere else. You see a lot of Phoenix, you see a lot of Greasefang. I was there because Pioneer is the format where you can do Fable bullshit, and I love doing Fable bullshit.
Fun card. It's no longer a place where you can do Heartfire Hero bullshit. So all of those Heartfire Hero promos they kept making, now banned in every format where the card is playable. So congratulations if you have one.
Not very good in Modern, Legacy, or Commander. So it's like taking the mouse out into the wild in winter. It's gonna die. Yeah. But so RIP. There goes our hero.
Rip to a real one. I love Heartfire Hero. I don't care. Banned everywhere. Free Heartfire Hero. No, but when I was playing Boros Heroic, I think I played 2 Heartfire Heroes and just sided it out pretty much every single game. But yeah, in the mono red version, it's a serious issue, and that was a long time ago. Metas have changed. So many powerful cards.
Screaming Nemesis is the card that I felt like I really couldn't beat. Heartfire Hero and Pioneer was actually sort of interesting because, like I keep mentioning, a lot of the format Torch the Tower is pretty good against. Torch the Tower is good against Heartfire Hero. Torch the Tower is good against Arclight Phoenix. It is about as good as Fatal Push against, Greasefang, Manifold, Mouse, many of these other staple threats in the format. Screaming Nemesis is the card that is like, oh, you're playing red removal, you are very fucked. Heartfire Hero also is part of what makes Reckless Rage, which we see in this list, so good in this score. It's both a proactive way to trigger your Screaming Nemesis that's also really good removal on rate. It goes well with Heartfire Hero, and maybe breaking up that shell helps a little bit. I think this does definitely make mono red worse. And
no, it surely does.
That could be good for the format, for the people who are going to still try to play it, including probably us from time to time. But
yeah, we'll see. No, I might take a look. I have some ideas that only can happen in the Pioneer format.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad ban. I think the reasoning is fine. It's a ghost town, but it's going to be a nicer one to live in for this change.
Yeah, so, I mean, the mouse thing is now dead in Pioneer entirely. You can't play mice anymore, so they might as well have banned Manifold and Emberheart Challenger as well.
I mean, Emberheart Challenger is still... I mean, it's probably...
There's no reason to play it in this deck. I mean, there may be
Well,
there may be reasons of playing it.
I don't know what red is going to look like. I don't know how...
They've changed red, for sure. It's no longer the mouse package.
How good is Reckless Rage in this deck without Heartfire Hero?
Yeah.
How does the red deck construct itself? Monstrous Rage is still a really good card, and
I mean,
that Monstrous Rage is still really good. With
not to talk about the new cards too much in this part, but like I think with the Fire Bending Student, you can still play Reckless Rage because with the Prowess trigger, it lives.
That would be good news for Emberheart Challenger and for Screaming Nemesis. If Firebending Student does cost 2 mana and doesn't have haste, but
I think we're going to get more into
card.
the Slick Shot. Obviously, that's not a good card with Reckless Rage. I don't know. I think maybe more, Monstrous Rage type stuff.
Cutter Prowess type of...
Cutter Prowess, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure. I can't tell you guys what Pioneer is going to look like, but I think that the red deck changes considerably if you take out the mouse package. And we've just seen in Standard that without a good one-drop mouse, the mouse package is horrible. People trying to play Boros mice are dumb. Like, you guys don't understand aggro.
They also took Monstrous Rage out of Standard.
Yeah.
To be fair, there are a lot more of the mouse package pieces still around in Pioneer, but missing this one drop is, I agree, going to be a huge deal. And I don't know exactly how it's going to play out.
Yeah, there's definitely still reasons to play Emberheart Challenger without... I mean, it has to be more of a prowessy list where you're targeting your creatures, right? Because, Reckless Rage also works on Emberheart Challenger. Like,
somehow Monastery Swiftspear returned.
Yeah, look, I love Monastery Swiftspear. That's one of my favorite Magic cards ever. So I like its return. But yeah, mice are done in Pioneer, which is fine. I don't think that we need to lament the mouse thing. There just are no one-drop mice that are any good if you ban Heartfire Hero. It's the one playable one-drop mouse, so yeah. I think Mono Red will be fine, though. Modern, no changes. I don't think there's anything... I mean, apart from, like, I don't know. I guess we could read what they say about Amulet Titan.
They did the meme where Amulet Titan is a deck with a storied history in the format, remaining tier 1 through metagames that include several cards on the ban list today. That is basically the meme.
It doesn't matter what you ban out of this deck. It's still good enough.
I mean, it would matter if they banned Amulet of Vigor.
Yeah.
It would still exist, but it would matter. Recent adaptations to this deck include an infinite combo between Shifting Woodland and Aftermath Analyst that allows the deck to produce infinite Primeval Titans, bounce a bunch of permanents with Odawara Soaring City, and destroy most of the opponent's lands by looping Beseiju Who Endures. That sort of combo isn't inherently problematic, but we are becoming increasingly aware of some tournament logistical issues that can arise with a deck as complicated as Amulet Titan when its win rate necessitates widespread adoption in a format. Given the deck's legacy and Modern's ability to absorb most forms of combo decks over time, we aren't interested in making changes to the format at this time, but we will be watching the impact that Amulet Titan has in the coming months. If the deck continues to disproportionately impact round times at competitive events, we may be exploring actions to take. That's interesting.
So their stance remains, this deck is too hard for you dummies to play, so we're not going to ban it. Like,
I mean, they banned KCI, and that deck was similarly really hard to play and creating tournament logistics issues. I don't know that it stops the tournament logistics issues just to ban Amulet of Vigor. It makes the deck worse, so it brings its play rate down, probably. But there are still, like, long, complicated Amulet lines involving spelunking, or maybe they wanted to have Wandering Minstrel to Green Suns for in absence of Amulet of Vigor. But Amulet will still take forever and still be a tournament logistics problem if you just get rid of Amulet of Vigor, or Titan Shift, whatever you want to call it, will still be a deck that still is a logistical problem, but is less played and therefore maybe less of a problem in that regard.
I don't play Modern, but I've heard a lot of people say that this is the best deck in Modern.
I think that's probably true. I think if I were to somehow find myself queued for a Modern RC, I would be learning Amulet Titan and learning Titan lines. There is stuff that I would rather be playing in Modern, but, I think I am smart enough to play Amulet Titan, and I think it is the best deck by enough. That is what I would be doing.
That seems fair enough to me. I think it's the best deck. I haven't seen much, but yeah, it's incredibly difficult to play. That's keeping these cards unbanned, I think. But as just like, somebody who really doesn't know much about it, but...
Legacy. Another one by Carmen Clamparans. Entomb is banned. Nadu Winged Wisdom is banned. After a significant amount of time and effort to preserve the iconic Entomb and Reanimate play pattern Legacy, the time has come to lay this one to rest. For multiple years, Dimir Reanimator has rested atop the Legacy metagame, surviving multiple bans, and each step has barely phased the deck. Earlier this year, we tried to ban around Entomb and force players to play a more committal version of Reanimator that chose between having a robust, fair game plan and a high-impact, albeit exploitable, flashy combo plan. In our previous Banned and Restricted update, we spoke about wanting to give the format more time to adjust to the current version of Dimir Reanimator, parenthetically, and Oops All spells. Finding ways to hate out decks as powerful as the ones in Legacy takes time, and in the case of Oops All spells, its metagame share has dropped dramatically, and the deck struggled a good deal in this year's North American Eternal Weekend Legacy Championship. So, as an aside, that is sort of true, but Oops actually did really well, or did post an above 50% win rate in a metagame where people were main deck and graveyard hate, and its worst matchups were at the very top of the field, some of which is getting banned out above it. This looks like another bare minimum Legacy ban to me, as someone who doesn't play Legacy because I would rather continue renting my apartment and don't want to play Magic Online. But this seems to me like another bare minimum ban that maybe not even the bare minimum that I would have expected, which would, or maybe it isn't a bare minimum ban. Basically, everyone who talks about Legacy talked about Tamiyo Inquisitive Student as a card that is...
That card, I mean, you can draw a million cards in Legacy, you can draw a million cards in Modern. It's so easy
incredibly
to turn on.
oppressive in the format. Also, the One Ring. Most in franchise Legacy players had it higher on the list of things that should be on the chopping block than Nadu, though a lot of them were also talking about Nadu. But I am surprised not to see Tamiyo or the One Ring, and I think if they really wanted to do right by Legacy players, they would have just taken Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informant out behind the barn and made that deck go away forever, or play Belcher or something.
Right. I mean, I don't know why they're so obsessed with preserve. Like, it seems like a good not a good percentage, but there are quite a few people trying to play Spy in Pauper. Like, it's not like it goes away. I imagine is it banned in Commander? Who cares? But like, I'm sure that there's ways to buy command, like if it's legal in Commander to do it in there. Like, why does it need to exist in Legacy?
The thing about Commander is it's sort of not the best way to. I think like Demonic Consultation is the best way to destroy your deck in Commander.
I mean, yeah, it's probably just
costs
better
1
ways.
mana instead of 4.
Yeah, it seems like a good difference.
You probably can play Spy variants in Commander, and people may have opinions about that. I don't know what they are, but
there's a way to play this stupid card if you're so obsessed with Spy existing. I don't know. I think it could go from Legacy. I once again don't know anything about Legacy.
I think also Spy just shouldn't exist. I think it is a worse thing to have exist than Hermit Druid, which is banned in Legacy. I think it is just miserable. You know, the nicest thing you can say for Oops is that by the standards of a Legacy deck, it's very cheap. It's about $600.
Oh, wow.
And so, but it, like, having this be your budget option to go to Eternal Weekend is miserable for the format, and Eternal Weekend attendance is down as a result. Anyway, let's see what they say about Entomb. Banning Entomb isn't a decision we take lightly or a step that fills us with joy. In years past, Entomb has done a bunch of things that look great from the perspective of game design. It inspires decks, it's iconic, and at times it's expanded the range of cards that could be played in Legacy. Unfortunately, we don't live in a world where Entomb allows Reanimator players to figure out if they should have a tech copy of Inkwell Leviathan, Archon of Valor's Reach, or Tidespout Tyrant. Its predominant use case shorthands to a small handful of creatures that play well in a more traditional, threats backed up by efficient counter magic game. I think this is largely true. I think they could have considered banning Reanimate, and there are still some sort of toolboxy Entomb decks. There was like a top 8 at Eternal Weekend North America that was just sort of a Sultai Legacy cards pile that played Entomb and played like 1 Life from the Loam and a bunch of like weird Entomb package cards. That was pretty sweet, but
it's kind of like in Standard when they banned Beanstalk and that cool blue-green like instants and sorceries and like snake deck with the crabs and snakes. Like, that deck was cool, but Beanstalk is horrible, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
like
like, it could have tried.
Sometimes people use bad
banning
cards to do cool stuff.
Yeah, they maybe could have tried banning Reanimate and left Entomb-Animate dead as a thing, but I think it's good that Entomb is no longer a part of Legacy. I'm honestly sad that it's going to be a part of Timeless. I think Entomb is a very reasonable card to have go. It's weird that Troll is still banned.
I was kind of thinking about that.
If you're going to take Entomb out behind the barn, Troll is probably like 65% for the sins of Entomb Reanimate and maybe 35% for the sins of Daze. Reanimate Troll is like an embarrassing game-losing thing to be doing in Timeless. I put a copy of Troll in my deck for a little while because I was like, oh, well, Ancient Tomb, Magus are in the format too. I gotta respect Red Stompy more. And I think, no, I didn't, first of all. And second of all, this card just sucks. I am boarding it out in a lot of games, even in strip mine matchups. I just want it not in my deck. It is really embarrassing when it's not backed up by Daze, when your Delver threats aren't reliably living, and that 6 damage isn't winning the game in 3 turns reliably. Maybe it would still be a powerful thing to be doing because it is so hard to block compared to, Oliphant or Generosent, that it would be good if it were unbanned in Legacy. I think maybe similar to, not banning Tamiyo, not banning the One Ring, not banning Informant Spy, it seems like the sort of thing that they would do to throw a bone back to Reanimator players if they were trying to do more than the bare minimum for the format. It seems to me like they're maybe doing less than the bare minimum, but yeah, it's weird.
Legacy stays 3 months behind. Even after banning 2 cards, they haven't done anything.
I wonder what they said about Nadu. Nadu is actually an interesting one where it was probably over the line. Both the breakfast and more mid-range, I'm just going to use Nadu to draw 12 cards and win the game somehow versions of the deck were quite good, but it seemed like it was behind Tamiyo and the One Ring on the list of things that needed to go. So let's see what they said about it. On the other side of the predictability spectrum is Nadu Winged Wisdom. This one is a bit more straightforward. It's a power level outlier that's flown under the radar in a similar fashion to what we saw last year in the time leading up to Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3. Nadu decks haven't been seeing a ton of online representation despite their win rates, in part because of how cumbersome the deck is to manage in an online client. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but there are 2 versions of Nadu decks in Legacy. One is adapting decks, affectionately referred to as Cephalid Breakfast, and by the way, they've been affectionately referred to as Cephalid Breakfast, named after Cephalid Illusionist, for a long time, and it's weird that you didn't know about them when you printed Nadu, because Nadu does work the same way, except Nadu does a generically good thing instead of mill your deck when targeted by a 0 mana card. So this is the highest placing Nadu list from the previously referenced North American Eternal Weekend like Championship, and is closer to what we like to see out of a combo deck in an Eternal format. It's often a deterministic kill when it combos, repeatedly targeting Cephalid Illusionist with a lot of the same cards that play well with Nadu in order to use a combination of Narcomoeba, Dread Return, and Thassa's Oracle to seal the deal. Sure. With this deck, the opponent has very clear points where interactive hate is going to be effective. Its power level can vary a bit more week to week because of that interactivity, and it is cool for the deck to be a part of the format. On the other hand, Nadu midrange, and if I was invited to play at Eternal Weekend and someone said I can spot you a meta tier deck, I would have played this one. I think this is just a blue mid-range deck with a lot of good cards that has Nadu in it as an I win button. The mid-range versions of Nadu are incredible at going over the top of what other players are doing to a degree that feels like the opponent is comboing, albeit in a way that is non-deterministic, takes a long time to resolve, is physically difficult to represent, and can take a long time to kill the opponent despite the game being effectively being decided. Nomad's Encore, targeting with its 0 mana ability at instant speed, means that its controller can augment Nadu's twice per turn restriction to a pseudo 4 times per turn. One by repeating any activations it cashed in on its controller's turn during the opponent's upkeep. This compounds with a round of additional triggers using either Endurance or Scythecat Cub to drag games out for a long time, even if the raw number of additional turns isn't obviously out of bounds. The deck is also far far more resilient to traditional hate than other combo decks by virtue of it being a bunch of creatures that can play a normal game of Magic in the face of cards like Pithing Needle that could also aim to attack the combo angle. This mix of the deck's power level, difficulty to attack, and undesirable play patterns has us acting against Nadu a bit more aggressively than we normally prefer to act against cards in Legacy, but we believe it is in the best interest of Legacy's health. I think that's all fair. All the reasons that I would have played the deck as mid-range that has an I win button is sort of my kind of bullshit, but it is a consistently problematic thing in many formats.
I mean, it sounds sort of like the VV combo or other, like decks that just like have
Sorin in Pioneer.
Yeah.
Sorin in Historic.
Anything that's sort of just like an infinite, or like Breach.
Right. The value Breach lines are very like this too, yes.
Like where, if you've just got like, it doesn't matter that you've taken out this key component of the combo. It's just like, okay, there's just no way of beating this deck. It has the insulation.
The mid-range Nadu version, once they get going, they're going to have mana up because Nadu puts lands in play untapped. What a card. But they also don't need mana because they're going to find a copy of Force of Will by flipping 12 cards. And if you needed to resolve a spell to win the game, it's not going to happen for you. It's weird that they didn't say anything about the One Ring or Tamiyo, that both of those are coming up a lot in, all the Legacy content that I've consumed. Statements like, anyone who knows what's going on in this format knows that Tamiyo is what this format is about. Lines to that effect. It is pretty weird that they weren't mentioned at all, and I think people are going to be kind of mad about this.
In 3 months, we can see we're starting to look at Tamiyo, Inquisitive Student. All right.
In 3 months, probably Tamiyo will go. I don't like buying into the conspiracy theories that they want to avoid banning Universes Beyond cards at all costs. They just banned Vivi. They banned the One Ring in Modern. It is weird that they did not even mention it. That the winning deck in Eternal Weekend was quote-unquote Mystic Forge combo, and Mystic Forge combo is a small L legacy name, or it is a legacy in the sense of the format name in that it doesn't make any fucking sense. It's called that because the deck existed before Lord of the Rings, these big colorless Key, Forge, Ancient Tomb combo decks, but it doesn't play 4 copies of Mystic Forge right now. It plays like 2, or maybe like 2 and 1 as a Karn target. It is a One Ring deck. One Ring is just a much better version of Mystic Forge in the deck. I don't think the One Ring is that good in Timeless. Timeless is sort of a different format, and
it's just like sometimes people play it in like the Goyf decks, right?
And Timeless, not really. But
Okay.
Sometimes you see energy variants play it, and I would much rather be up against a like Ring Gigantha energy variant than a Luris variant personally. The Golgari mid-range decks play it.
Maybe that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah,
they play Barrow-Goyf.
They
don't play the red one.
Golgari like Barrow-Goyf, Wary Zone Guard piles,
Strip Mine
piles. Yeah, play it. And like there are some like combo-y versions of Affinity, like one that I played in the later Swiss rounds and lost to because I could not draw the card Orcish Bowmasters in either game.
That's a good card.
I did make top 8.
Hey, gang.
Despite the wheels kind of falling off at the end of the Swiss rounds in that Timeless League. That was doing like combo-y Paradox Engine stuff to win with it. So it does powerful things in the format, but it's just not as good as Necro. The One Ring is a broken Magic card from 2023.
Sounds right.
And Necro is a broken Magic card from 1993. This is the old Magic, the deep Magic. What's the line? The crude imitation of Barad-dûr, which laughs at flattery and does not suffer imitation. But Tolkien also described Sauron as that to Morgoth. That is what the Ring is to Necro. All the things you remember hating about it from when it was unnerfed in Historic and when it was legal in Modern are basically true in Legacy and kind of then some. The best deck in the format is a combo deck around it.
But free mana is better in Legacy than it is in Timeless still.
Yes, that's also true.
I guess Seething Song is coming, but
mana in Legacy is still faster than Timeless. The Ring might be problematic eventually in Timeless.
It's certainly one of those cards you can never count out, even if it's not the best right now.
It'll be very good in Vintage forever.
Yeah.
It'll be very good in Commander forever. Its price isn't going to go down if you ban it. The Tolkien estate seems seems much chiller than they used to be. I think you should at least think about it.
About banning it. I don't think, like, banning it in Legacy cannot be a real Universes Beyond. Like, if they banned it in Modern, they can ban it in Legacy. Yeah. Like the time has already passed. They sold all the... Yeah,
I think
people
there
buy
are
collector packs, but how much money does Wizards make today on a collector pack of Lord of the Rings?
Wizards is staring at the One Ring, saying, after all, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I keep it? And I am here saying, I am not trying to rob you. I'm trying to help you.
Exactly. If it's good enough for Gandalf, it's good enough for me, I guess.
So, Legacy players, sorry that your format is still 6 months behind where it ought to be. I hope things get better for you. On to Pauper. High Tide is banned.
So they have like a whole article about it that I guess we could get into, but I think that they're banning it because it's annoying and it takes you 45 minutes to do the combo. It's not even
I don't know
like...
that High Tide was even the best non-deterministic Storm deck. Bryant Cook of the Epic Storm was saying that he thought Cycle Storm is still better.
I trust him. He knows more about Storm than most.
Yeah, I think if he thinks that, he's probably right. High Tide is annoying, tournament logistics.
And I guess sometimes on Magic Online, they say it had, some weeks had 55% win rates, which is a little bit toxic.
Okay, yeah. So it might also be not as high of a ceiling, but a higher floor as these combo decks go. Like, I could never figure out Cycle Storm just from the lists.
Yeah, you should watch some of Brian's games. He'll teach you how to play.
I watched Brian play it, and it's like, oh, you're supposed to cycle in response to some of these things on the stack and do all of these sorts of things. And it's like, okay, I could learn this, but it is a harder deck to understand, and it might be less of a logistical problem. It is hard for me to tell, honestly, than High Tide. But yeah, I don't think either of us are sad to see High Tide gone.
We literally, I at least talked about how I was afraid of it. You know, like, I don't think it needs to be feared because of its power level. I think it's probably fine, but dealing with it is annoying. You know, Pyro and Red Elemental Blasts are still really good sideboard cards. Two of the best decks in the format are still going to be Fairies, and Mono Blue Terror is what most people are playing right now. I mean, I think that the Blue Black Terror deck is still good, and like Unexpected Fangs is a good Magic card, but High Tide's just a stupid card. Like, everybody had their fun, and now it can go back to being banned. Like,
now it can go back to being a bad deck in Legacy.
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't even really read the article, but it's just about continuously splicing. That's how the deck works. We've talked about it before on this channel. Kind of a ridiculous deck that was really difficult to interact with. Kind of like have to Blue Blast at the beginning on the High Tides, and if they have an answer for that, you need to Red Blast, Pyro Blast, they're High Tides. That's really the only time you have a chance. And if they Giga Drowse you before you get a chance to do that, even on your turn or something, the game's just over and you just have to watch them play with themselves. So not fun, not a fun deck to exist. Yeah, I'm glad it's gone.
Cycle Storm is more sort of naturally interactable through Graveyard Hate, and
Graveyard Hate's good against Cycle Storm because they're trying to get all the black mana back.
Yeah,
with Reaping the Graves or whatever. Yeah, and
counting the number of creatures in their graveyard and trying to recur them.
And you also like can interact with creature removal if you can take out their pinger or their life gainer or whatever they're doing at that time.
Sure, at the right
moment. There, yeah. So like,
it is pretty instant speed once they're going off.
Yeah,
which is part of why like figuring out the deck was, you know, something that like I couldn't really do on my own. But I wouldn't be thrilled with creature removal being my best option against a good Cycle Storm player.
Yeah.
But it is interactable in more ways and more conventional ways than High Tide.
Yeah,
I do agree with that.
As far as like playing relics or Nile spell bombs, you just have to anyway because there's a graveyard deck that's very prevalent. Spy, you need to be able to interact with the graveyard. The graveyard is something you're playing Magic. You have to be able to deal with your opponent's graveyard. There is something busted they can do with the graveyard in all formats. So
more normal sideboard or maybe even main deck style interaction is better against Cycle Storm. I agree.
Whereas like Mesmeric Fiend and Red Blast
more
of
capable
certain kinds are really your only the graveyard hate to try and interrupt that is pretty bad against High Tide. So like it's just it's fine.
I buy this. I'm not sorry to see High Tide go. Alchemy, no changes. Historic, a bunch of cards, some of which I didn't even know were coming to Arena because it is so confusing trying to track the
special guest.
Bonus sheet is easy to track, but the other parts of Avatar Eternal, which are a combination of Jumpstart product and other stuff that I don't fully understand. My current best understanding is that every Avatar Eternal card except Sol Ring is coming to Arena and being craftable, and these 5 are pre-banned in Historic.
Well, good thing they didn't let Sol Ring come into Timeless.
Okay, Force of Negation is pre-banned. Frantic Search is pre-banned. Mystical Tutor is pre-banned. Entomb is pre-banned. Dark Depths is pre-banned. With a plethora, SAT word, bonus sheets, and special guests, releases coming to MTG Arena this year. Historic's card pool has expanded rapidly. This is true. For now, we are aiming to avoid format destabilization with pre-bans while monitoring the metagame to ensure that no individual deck is out of line. Eldrazi...
You're monitoring the metagame like the fucking security guards at the Louvre. That's a joke. Anyway, continue.
Eldrazi has been enjoying popularity and success in high-level best of 3 with the addition of Eldrazi Temple, and one of the decks we are keeping an eye on alongside aggressive Luris decks, Energy and Auras, and fast combo decks, Val combo, Lotus Field combo, and Persist combo. So at least they are talking about
the right decks.
The metagame as it exists, not
We're not
as
talking about elves or something.
Not as it existed 6 months ago before they nerfed Sorin. These are decks that you can reasonably expect to see. I think they are underrating how dominant Eldrazi has been, except I think if nothing major changes in Historic before the next qualifier in it, I will probably be in on Lotus Field. I will be the bad guy. It is maybe just the best deck in the format. It's certainly the best deck in the format that wants to be main decking 4 copies of Consigned to Memory, which is pretty good in like this awful Eldrazi metagame.
Is that like something you can just do in Historic right now? Like, can you just play some Consigns in your main deck and it's like a safe enough bet?
Maybe. I think you want to be doing something with it because Historic's kind of a wild place and it's never clear what people on the ladder will be playing. But like if they're playing off meta, then like their deck's often not that good. So maybe you can just main deck a bunch of Consigns for the Eldrazi decks. But yeah, I think Lotus Field is the best deck that naturally wants to be playing it. And I think that deck is absurdly good. At least they didn't give it Frantic Search. They did not put, the broken old card that's banned in Legacy into Historic where it would have been. It's certainly better than Hidden Strings in Lotus Field. Hidden Strings doesn't draw cards. And this fills your graveyard for Breach. Would have been nuts. I am glad Frantic Search at least is not going to be a part of the format. I'm glad Entomb is not going to be part of the format. I honestly wish it weren't about to be a part of Timeless. It just got banned in Legacy. There is less that you can do to interact with it in Timeless than you could in Legacy. It's not going to be great. Mystical Tutor is, it's Mystical Tutor. Enlightened Tutor is going to be legal in Historic, but Dark Depths pre-banned. Depths would be good. I don't know if it would be good right now because Merit Lage sure does get wrecked by Kozilek's Command. As someone who would have at least tried to play green-black Depths, I think it is probably correct that I shouldn't be allowed to do that for reasons that they bring up here. Thespian Stage,
Crop Rot.
Hexmage is in the format now. Hexmage both lages up Dark Depths and scams Overlord, so I think that deck probably would have been pretty good in a vacuum, though, again, how good would it actually have been in Kozilek's Command, the format? Can we please get rid of Eldrazi Temple? Why is it even here? You pre-banned Mox Opal, and the same logic should apply.
It's free mana.
It is conditional, but it is fast mana, which is supposed supposed to be not part of the format identity. Timeless is no changes. You know, I don't think anything needs to be banned out of Timeless. Probably there are power outliers. You know, I was talking earlier about how much better I think Necro is than the Ring, and I think Necro is a little bit of an outlier in Timeless, to be honest. I am glad that I still get to play with it. Strip Mine, I think I agree that Strip Mine at 4 is actually sort of fine. The Timeless is sort of so broken that a lot of the things you do with lands are obscene enough that it's like, yeah, this is a Lotus Petal. That's all I need it to be. I think some of those Strip Mine strategies are good. If you are the Psycho trying to play the fair blue decks, so much of your permission is soft that Strip Mine is a big part of you having a chance against a deck like Show and Tell or a lot of these combo decks. So yeah, I basically agree with leaving Strip Mine at 4. For what Timeless is, most of this is good. I wish that Entomb wasn't going to be craftable yet. But because I think that's going to be kind of miserable. Brawl, they banned a bunch of stuff. Strip Mine, Mana Drain, Chrome Mox, Ancient Tomb. So that is, I think, if you have a copy of each, you get 4 mythics. Brawl players are the sort of people they are, so they whine constantly. The format is still garbage magic.
But you don't have to just do Strip Mine
but it is
stuff,
it is a way to it is a way to
Exclusivity.
get your dailies done if you don't want to be in the sweaty rank queue, and you will get mana drained less now, or strip locked less now as you're trying to do that. Cool, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it also puts some separation between Brawl and Time. Not that they were.
Yeah, it makes Brawl more like historic Brawl, which it was originally designed to be, and less of what it has been, which is sort of just singleton timeless.
Yeah.
That's the BNR. What did we learn? What did Wizards learn? How are we feeling about?
So is any format in a good place now after this? Pauper. Pauper's always sick. Pauper was sick with or without this, though, unfortunately.
Standard is better. Pioneer is probably better. Modern is, I think, in a good place, is in a decent place for, you know, modern enjoyers, which I probably would be one of if, again, I was independently wealthy and not worried about paying rent ever again. Yeah, I mean, Historic's in a very bad place. Timeless, I think, is sort of an okay place, and I was
But
going
is it
to
getting
be more.
worse?
I was expecting it to get better, and now I'm less sure. We'll talk about that more in the set review. I think that all the changes they made were positive,
But once again, maybe there are a few more that I would do, or
and maybe with a
couple
faster
printings or something
faster
for
band
standard.
cadence, things will get better faster. Went longer on that one than I thought, but there was a lot to talk about. So, Hooting Mandrills signing off. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you would have done differently from WotC. Let us know if you agreed or disagreed with anything we had to say. Let us know what needs to be banned in February.